3, 2, 1. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the CriminalCast, a podcast style YouTube video thing. There's too many labels to call these things. This is a project spun off of the Unnamed Indie Comic Show. We discuss everything Ed Brubaker. Well, not everything. All the indie stuff of Ed Brubaker here. There's a group of 4 of us. Call ourselves the Criminals. Well, that's not true. I call them Criminals. But tonight I got Eric Breen. Skip and Nalo are unable to join us at the moment, unfortunately. Hopefully they'll be able to come in later. Eric, how are you doing tonight?
I feel like a glass that's half full.
Speaking of a glass that's half full, I got 2 fingers of Maker's 46 here.
That 4th finger is extended.
No, you don't drink bourbon with the pinky extended. That'll get your ass kicked.
That all depends on where.
Oh man. Yeah, I feel like whenever I'm reading criminal, bourbon's the choice. Like I just feel right. Just a little bit though.
And by the way, I'd like to take time to say hello to our audience. Hi, Joe.
Joe Corallo has joined us. Thank you, Joe. It was very nice to see you in our last episode of the Unnamed Indie Comic Show. I hope you found some enjoyment out of that. We're going to try to get through with just me and Breen. We know that Nalo and Skip are who you really come for, but the show must go on, as they say. This is our 3rd episode. I am so excited to be getting more into the world of Ed Brubaker. I knew he was a good writer. You're kind of one of the primary guys who turned me on to him. Once upon a time, you were like, you got to read the Ed Brubaker Cat Bash. And I was like, yeah, all right. And then eventually I put on my wish list, and then it came on sale one day, and so I bought it, and then it languished there for a while. And then one day I was like, yeah, I should probably read this. And I was like, oh, this is really good. And then everyone was freaking out, about it. Like, oh, in recent times, the latest criminal series from 2019, everyone's freaking out about that. Kill or Be Killed. Everyone's freaking out about that. And I'm like, there's something going on here. And this all started about when I read Pulp towards the end of last year to kick off the Indie Comics Show, actually. And Pulp is the best thing I read last year, hands down. It's phenomenal. It might still be the best thing I've read from Ed Brubaker to date, although I have a lot more to read. And I was just convinced at that point, especially with you guys being even bigger fans than I am. I'm the new kid on the block when it comes to this. I was like, we gotta do shows on this. I want to talk about it. Just geek out. This to me is one of the fun things about comics, to sit around, like you go to the comic book shop and you just read something awesome and you're talking to fellow people about it and like, you got to get this. I mean, don't you agree?
It's cool to have great stories and find other people that appreciate them as much as you do. And it is cool when you can get somebody interested in something and you give them something, because it still happens to me 45 years in. Somebody will recommend something and I'll check it out and go, man, this is really, really good. And especially when it's somebody that, has, I like that, that we were able to get you interested in Brubaker, and there's so much for you to now discover. And what's cool about this is it gives me a chance to reread this stuff, and with my memory, it's like reading them again for the first time.
Man,
so it's I'm right there with you. It's like I'm discovering it again for the first time.
Yes, I am knowing how you feel. I definitely get those moments where I'm like, I comprehend things still really well. My cognitive abilities are there, but just that retaining of detailed, of information. I can read a book and I can understand what happens and get all the twists and turns, but then ask me, who was that character's name? I'm like, the guy, the person, I just like retaining those facts is tough. But that's a great thing. Actually, I've started to notice what you pointed out is I'm going back and I'm reading stuff and I get that enjoyment again. I'm like, oh yeah, I totally forgot that this happened like this. Um, so that's really fun. I just read this a couple of days ago, and it's fantastic. I have to like really hold myself back from just binging all the Brubaker stuff because I know we're gonna be doing shows on it, and so I'm kind of like waiting for that reason. And I don't want it to blow my wad right now because there's only so many books out, unfortunately. Um, where where would you say this particular book, Lawless, stands? Just ballpark kind of in the overall indie world of Brubaker that you've read. Is this in the top half, the bottom half? Um, how much of impact did this particular book make on you?
It's the best way I can answer that, and it's going to sound glib, but it's not. The best Brubaker book that I've read is the last Brubaker book that I've read. Because and what I mean by that, it's pretty self-explanatory. When we go further in and I reread those again, my retention or what I remember of those books is that I know that I loved them, and I kind of have an idea of the general plot because the more you read of the criminal series, the more of the elements. There are a lot of the same elements from one book to the next. It's the different things that they do with the characters that separate one from the other. But if until you go back and read them again, short of having a photographic memory, it's hard, especially when I've got tens of thousands of comic books fighting for limited cranial capacity as it is.
Certainly.
So I read one, I go, God, I forgot how freaking great this was. Yeah, I when I read Pulp, since it was new, it was like, man, this is the best thing he's ever written. Ash, you gotta check this out. You're never right. No, no, really, I am this time. Um, and then Reckless, like, oh man, this is really cool. Not sure if it's as good as Pulp, but this is a new thing for Brubaker because there's really never any good guys in his. Although I would argue that the main character in Pulp was, but and then now going back and rereading Criminal from the beginning, it's like you know, Lawless. It was better than Coward, but if I when I was read Coward is better,
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
and there aren't many writers that have that effect on me, but it's just I've yet to find a clunker in anything he's written. So yeah, so like I said, is you know weird as that sounds, the best one is the one I just read, and then whatever we read next will be the leader in the clubhouse at that time because that's just how good he is.
I kind of know what you're saying on that. I kind of relate to it now. uh, Not 100% because I still feel like Pulp is the best thing analytically that I think he's read. There's just so much powerful uh, exploration of themes and just metaphor. It's a really artsy book, and I know that sounds kind of pretentious and whatever, but obviously it's not a book that only appeals to the pretentious. It's a book I haven't heard anyone say anything negative about this book. Everywhere I go to the comic book shop, people don't talk about books like they used to, but there's still some talk, and that is one of the books. People are talking about Pulp. Did you read Pulp? Did you read? Like,
I
wow.
think I think I can help you with that. When you, I think what makes Pulp arguably the best thing he's ever written is you read these criminal stories and they're really cool little noir slices of crime life, where it's bad guys and worse guys generally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Pulp had higher stakes. We were, literally talking Nazism, and
True.
that it felt it's like okay, the and I'm making finger quotes here. The good guys, like in this case, Tracy Lawless. If he dies in a hail of bullets, it's like, yeah, well, he kind of had it coming. But the guy in Pulp, and again, here's my faulty memory. You know, you really rooted for him to make it, although it's a Brubaker book, so of course he wasn't going to.
Well, that's kind of
But
interesting thing about Brubaker too, as far as at least I'm aware. Again, I'm the new kid on the block. I've only read a handful of his indie stuff, but I kind of came into Criminal thinking, oh, it's going to be a book about criminals, and I'm anyone who listens to me on my show, and I'm always advocating about how much I'm about the hero story and da da, I don't want to read about villains, but and so I kind of was like, I don't know, is this going to just be about a bunch of a-holes? Like I just, but then, I don't know, it all makes sense to me now that I've read these books because I am a big fan of crime stories. It's one of my favorite genres when it comes to like crime films are one of my favorite films. I mean, if I think of some of my top films of all time, movies like Heat, Goodfellas, just two of the top ones that come to my head right at the moment. I mean, just amazing crime stories, and Brubaker is drawing kind of from the same well that the filmmakers Michael Mann and Martin Scorsese, respectively, are doing in those films. And now that I've read the books, I'm like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of this? Like, I do like crime stories. He's not trying to tell stories about capes and heroic ideology. He's telling crime stories. What I love that he does in these books, though, is like even though these characters are criminals, and even in Pulp, that guy wasn't a good guy. he was,
but he wasn't a bad guy either.
Well, he wasn't doing the bad things that he used to.
Yeah,
but he was a pretty bad dude, and he almost, because he gets caught, he was about to do some bad things again, and he gets caught, and he's like, and then of course the story takes a left turn, does some interesting things, and you're like, okay, this is all great, but Brubaker makes no marks that this is some guy to look up to. This is a guy who probably should have gone away for a long, long time, but that's not the point of the story. And what I like about what he does is, like, even though these guys are criminals, just like in the movies I talked about, Heat and Goodfellas, all the main characters, well, in Heat you have the cops, but all the main characters that are the criminals, you like them, and you kind of root for them, and you want them to, like, succeed. And I think part of it is because there's almost a sense of honor. There's like humanity in these characters, and I don't necessarily think you root for the criminals to win. You root for the humanity side, and then there's like a line that can be crossed, and he seems to explore it in many of the books I've read, where it's like, look, it's one thing to like rob a bank. It's another thing to like murder your partner because you were too greedy. You wanted a bigger, stake. And it's clearly like, as a reader, Brubaker doesn't have to preach to you. You get it. You're like, that guy needs to die. Like robbing a bank, you're breaking the law. And I don't know. That's how at least I'm identifying with it. Do you see any similarities on your side?
Oh, absolutely. There's, as I said, the thing that one of the tenets of a Brubaker book is bad guys versus worse guys. But even a lot of the worst guys have a code of their own. It's sort of like the criminal code in a Brubaker book is a sliding scale. And the person who you're drawn to, obviously the protagonist, the main character, his is the closest to admirable. I said closest, not admirable, but in the ballpark if you can overlook some of the things that get him to that point. Now, like I said, in this particular one, as we go forward, that when you're talking about the character needs to die, this one kind of had, I don't know how predictable it was, but it had a twist on the usual criminal theme. When we find out what happened to Ricky, and so I think that was the part of the book, right? When I reread it, I went, Oh yeah, I had completely forgotten about that, but that's somehow kind of fitting for a Brubaker book. So yeah, that's like I said, it's one of the things that he does so well. As I said, as I said earlier, like in this particular book, we know we're supposed to root for Tracy Lawless, but we also aren't going to shed any tears if he you know if the hero dies at the end, so to speak.
Yeah, an interesting thing that I'm also picking up from the Brubaker books that I've been reading is that everyone kind of gets what they deserve, and I think that's another way that Brubaker masterfully skirts around the morality issues. And he can write stories about bad guys, and you can walk away. At least me, I can walk away from the book and I can feel satisfied because I don't feel like he's glorifying violence and criminality. I think he's just realizing, hey, this is a really good setting to tell stories, because most of us don't live life like this. I mean, I think that's what crime stories are so fascinating, because most of us live boring lives where we go on YouTube and talk about comic books. These guys are out robbing banks and doing crazy shit, and we're like, you can live vicariously through them, and so that's part of the excitement. But you don't idolize these guys. You don't ever walk away. At least I don't. At least going, yeah, that Tracy Lawless, man, he's awesome. Like, and it's likewise the last book with Leo. He had some things he needed to get out, and some people needed to pay, but ultimately Leo pays as well. Everyone's got to pay the piper at the end, and you've kind of walk away. At least, like I said, I feel like satisfied. Like everyone has to pay the price. Some pay more than others because they deserve. They did worse. And I think there's a sense of almost justice in a twisted, perverse way. And it's kind of the same thing, I think, that draws us, or at least me, to hero stories, right? Like if I read a Superman comic, let's try to draw something that's far away from criminal as possible. He's a paragon of virtue, and he's all about justice and making sure that justice. And we never have to see Superman pay the price. Any price that he pays is unfair because he is virtuous. Whereas these characters, they pay the price and because they're not virtuous. And at the end, we, the reader, are satisfied that everyone got what they deserved. And I don't know if I'm putting it together correctly. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, it does. As from the one we did before this, Coward, we find out what all of this got Leo. He obviously survived the gunshots, but and now look where he is. And I like the way they weaved that into the plot as an excuse to get him another appearance, and B, advance the plot as far as how Tracy was able to get in with the gang. So that's another strength of Brubaker, is the way the way he has the recurring characters and how they fit into the story. And I thought that was a cool little touch, early in this particular book. But yeah, I said there's, as I said, there's nobody I mean, you kind of do pick somebody to root for in these books, knowing that it's almost out of, well, I guess you got to root for somebody, because but again, like I said, he makes even the bad guys compelling. He makes the bad guys compelling, the worst guys interesting, and he makes you care, uh, you know, about everybody in his stories to varying degrees.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the plot and what's going on, I think um, we should probably get into that now. For all those that are listening in right now live, thank you for being here. Very much welcome. Um, if you want to participate in any thoughts, please feel free, type them in the chat. This is a stream that's about geeking out about Brubaker's books. This particular episode is all about the issues 6 through 10 of the very first Criminal series that came out. They've been collected into trade form. This one's called Lawless. It's volume 2 of the series. And each of these can be read in any order you like. Naturally, most people probably want to start at the beginning, but these are all self-contained stories. They do relate to each other, but you can read them out of chronological order if you want. It could be interesting. So if any of the things that happen in this book, if you haven't read Coward, it might spoil some things, but ultimately not the overall stories themselves. Hopefully you are reading these and you are a fan. If you're not, hopefully this will convince you to give these a try. We're going to keep doing more episodes, usually every other week, no regular time. We're going to be just discussing Brubaker books at length. And this is your opportunity to talk shop with us, just like you're hanging around the comic book store, and tell us what you love about Brubaker. Put in the comments, anything you want. Just like I'm sitting here talking to Eric about his love, and I like to hear the background of how he got started, what he thinks about the books, what he loves about them. I want to hear from you guys as well. So normally Skip and Tosh is our synopsis master of synopsis. He's not here today, so I'm going to fill in and try to to do half as good a job. And we're going to go into the book in detail. So let's get the screen shared over here, and let us begin. This is by Ed Brubaker and longtime artist partner Sean Phillips. You'll notice the theme. Almost all of the books that he does in the independent world are with Sean Phillips. There are a few variations. Colors by Val Staples. I believe Val only does colors in the early works. Later on switches to Elizabeth Breitweiser, and then eventually Sean Phillips' son. I'm drawing a blank on his name. But it just gets better and better. The art and the coloring just get so much better as the series go on. This is part 1, and we see a ripped up photograph, which is a big piece of symbolism, I think, for the whole series. This picture right here, this is kind of where the whole story is going to be built around. And it's 2 brothers and a ripped up photo. You can see part of it's burnt, and a souped up hot rod in the background. And it starts off. I really like how the book starts off, but we'll talk about that later. Starts off, we see our protagonist. We'll know that he's Tracy Lawless, hence the book Lawless. He's holding up some guy and choking him to death, and then he drops him over the edge into a dumpster, as then the dumpster truck or the trash truck picks up the dumpster, hauls it away, and basically it's a great way to kill someone, I guess. To get away with it. I'm like reading this going, holy shit, that would work. I don't know if it really would, but seems like it would. And Tracy's a cool criminal. He just walks away. He's got no fear of anyone suspecting him. We get some flashback sequences where he's in the military. He's been locked away. He apparently did something, and he's not well liked by everyone else. And they give him a picture of his brother, let him know his brother's dead. Now we know his brother Ricky Lawless is dead. If you read the previous comic, Coward, that book opens up with Leo, the main protagonist, having a flashback of some robbery thing that they were doing, and Ricky dies. Am I correct on this, Eric? Ricky dies in that.
No. Remember, Ricky died. We find out how Ricky dies in this.
That's true. That's true. But I thought Ricky died because it shows him that he says he worked with Ricky, and maybe Ricky got shot or something. I don't know. I guess we'll talk about that later. I guess I was
Mhm.
confused. Maybe that was misdirection. Um, Either way, Tracy's like, he's been told your brother's dead. It's been like a year because he's been locked up for 18 months, and it's like your brother's dead. He's like, why didn't anyone tell me? He's like, we were told not to give you anything, no contact with the outside world. So he's pissed off. He goes AWOL. He just leaves, um, gets on a bus, and he's gonna figure out things on the way. Like he needs money, he'll make that happen on the way. He shows up to an old contact with 20 grand in cash, big stacks of money, and this guy that he's talking to is like, I'm out of the business. I don't want anything to do. He's like, here's money. You need this, and he's like, oh, so of course, money talks, and he needs fake IDs and contacts and all this stuff because he's gonna find out who killed his brother, and he's gonna need a new identity and all this stuff. I like how the narrative goes here because then we go back flashback again of the bus ride and how one of the bus stops some town and it stops by like a port or something. Tracy recognizes, hey, this is where big transfers of money go. He knows right because he's got a criminal background, so he knows right who to look for. Runs into these guys, takes their money, um, has an altercation with them, and basically gets away with it. Then hops on a bus, and the bus keeps going. And you're just like, man, that's another crazy way to get away with a crime. Like everyone's gonna sit around town looking what happened because someone got robbed. You're just on a bus crossing the country. Um, so he gets his fake identities, and there's a bar, the Undertow, which we can remember from the Coward series. And Skip had likened the Undertow in a similar fashion to the Continental in the John Wick movies. And I thought that was kind of an appropriate analogy. It's like the poor man's Continental. And I like that because it's kind of a hub where these criminals all are. We was used in the previous series. Now it's being used again. We see Angie. Correct me if I'm wrong. Angie's from the Coward story. Is that right, Eric?
Yeah, she was the lady's little girl.
That's what I thought.
So
Okay.
I'm guessing Gnarly is taken care of now.
Yeah. So Gnarly is in, and we see that Sam West, the new fake identity for Lawless, he's going by Sam West now, is eyeing at this group that his brother used to run with, and he feels like they probably killed him. That's probably what happened. Someone wanted a bigger slice of the pie, and they killed him, and he's going to infiltrate the gang or the outfit. One of the ways he's going to do it, he's going to off one of their members, the driver. We get some flashback scenes in the military. That kind of just it gives us some insight into Lawless's kind of crazy nature. This is a guy who doesn't fear anything. He's just a tough guy. And he sees pictures of his dead brother, and it's driving him, it's motivating him. And what's interesting is we're also learning that Tracy doesn't really care about people. Hated his dad. He used to beat up his brother. He ended up leaving him to join the military so he could get off of a prison charge. But for some reason, he's got this insane loyalty. Like now that his brother's dead, he's got to avenge him. Let's see.
So much that it's that the family split where he went off with his dad to help him in his criminal endeavors, and Ricky was left to take care of the ailing mother. As we learn the story, the roles probably, if the roles had been reversed, both of them might have turned out a lot differently.
Right, but we don't know that yet.
No, but
yeah. But it's a good point, but we don't know that yet. So Tracy
and
is
something else,
Go ahead.
if I may,
Yeah,
real quick.
go for it.
I I got the impression that Tracy wasn't committed to killing someone to as a way in. It just kind of fell into it when he left the bar, and the guy was, yeah, I guess he was keeping an eye on that guy. I don't know if he was going to kill him or if he was going to, yeah, or just get him out of the way. I don't know how else you would do that, but when the guy revealed himself to be a complete piece of shit. He goes, he kind of made his decision for him, and then he goes that he was the driver was like a bonus. So
Yeah, correct. That's good detail. Here on the right side page, we can see that the previous driver, I'll just call him, I forget his name, he's, having a hooker, then he won't pay her, and he beats her up and all this stuff. And he's just like, again, going back to that callback of like, there's lines. It's one thing to be a criminal, it's another thing to be a complete piece of shit. And so
yeah,
this is where the plot, or not the plot, but this is where his own little plan to get rid of him starts. And we find out that the guy he threw off the rooftop at the very beginning of the story, that's this scene. So we've now come full circle. The narrative talks about with Tracy, it's always a matter of timing, and things just work out in a timing sense. And it just so happened the guy climbed up to the roof to like piss off the edge, and Tracy's like, "Oh, hey, look, garbage truck is coming." Huh. Just took the opportunity, and he doesn't think about it. That's one of the things about Tracy is he kind of acts before he thinks. But it allows him to get away with a lot of things because he doesn't flinch. Like he doesn't he's just action, and other people are taking too long to think about things. So we get one of the main characters introduced here. What's her name?
Mallory.
Mallory. So Mallory used to she's one of the crew, but she used to kind of have a thing for his brother. And he basically introduces himself and is like, "Hey, here you guys need a driver." So, because now it's been days by this point, and everyone's getting worried. What the fuck is up with so and so? He hasn't shown up for the job. And that's where this book ends. So,
Like they said, who are you? I'm someone who can drive.
yeah. All right, Eric. So I've just summed it up in a really half-assed fashion. Let's talk about this first issue. What stuck out of you?
Well, I thought it was a good setup issue. It kind of gave us some insight into who Tracy was and how his mind works, and it I say we get an idea of how, like I said, how he thinks and how things just kind of fall into place for him. I got the impression that he was a very quick thinker, and like his mind works the way that he could, whether it's happenstance or not, he arrives at the best possible conclusion for his plans almost instantly. So I said Dave, knocking off Dave, and like all the way he got the money to, while he was going across country to get to where he needed to go. So I thought that was, yeah, I think we learned a decent amount about Tracy. We learned a little bit about some of the other characters, mainly what a piece of crap Dave was and why he had to get out of the way to make this work. And
Yeah,
it was neat to see the the little girl cameo. That I thought that was a nice touch, from Coward. And I don't know, I said, it like with all Brubaker books, that first issue is like a harbinger of things to come, and yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm in. Give me the next issue.
exactly. It is a bit of a burn with these books, and that's one thing I really like about how Ed Brubaker's writing is it is a burn. It's like a fuse, like you're watching. It's like the little and it's like the burning fuse, and it's just leading. Eventually it's gonna get to that stack of dynamite, and shit's gonna go off, and you're just watching it all unfold. I found Tracy to be a fascinating character. I like that Ed's made every book I've read of his, every character feels so radically different. From Red, I just call him Red, from the guy in Pulp, from Red to the main character in Reckless. Although Tracy, I guess maybe Tracy and the character from Reckless might be the closest.
Yeah, but
In feel.
the guy from Reckless, you know, he is actually a good guy
True, true.
who was undercover. So I mean, personality traits may be similar, but I kind of think that Tracy is broken,
Yes.
I didn't get the feeling that Ethan is.
True, true.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
damaged, yes. Tracy is broken.
But just in the similarities that neither of them kind of know fear, neither of them. I guess I'm defeating my own point. I'm trying to make a point that they're all different, and they are. Um, but I also really like, and the difference is in this series, Coward and Lawless were part of the original 10-issue series, so it's broken up into two, and they feel like yin and yang. Like this is the opposite. Tracy is the opposite of a coward, right? Leo was all like, I don't want conflict. I avoid conflict. I plot out everything. I think about it over and over and over before I do anything.
Yeah,
Tracy's
but
the opposite. Tracy's like, I don't think about it. Just do it. Just, you know.
no, but the title coward was, irony because he was anything but. It was
Yeah, he
just that
wasn't.
that's kind of the trait that was assigned to him by people that didn't know better until they found out
This is true,
how
and
wrong
this
they were.
book's not called Brave. It's not like
No, that's
I'm just
a good
saying
one.
that the characters feel like yin and yang because Leo, he didn't just
Leo is
act.
not in any hurry to kill anybody.
He thought things like overly to like
Yeah.
just
Oh yeah,
because the
that
plan had.
part you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and where Tracy is just like whatever, just go to in, but just start hurting people. You're like, whoa, dude, you had to think about this, and true to form, this book ends because of his mannerisms like that. Get Tracy to his ultimate end, because maybe he should have been a little bit more like Leo. But
I don't think it would have made any difference, and that's what makes Brubaker books so interesting. You know,
maybe.
Leo thought everything to death, and in the end, it was Leo was basically, I guess, as it turned out, he was kind of on a suicide mission
Well, Leo
that he
got
that he lived
betrayed
through.
over and over again.
Yeah, but
Tracy
whereas
burns himself ultimately, and
that's good. It's a good way to put it. But they use vastly different amount of thinking, but kind of end up in a similar place. Just some prisons don't have bars.
because everything that happens in this first issue feels just very kind of innocuous. Oh, okay, like he robs these guys at this port, kills the dude off the roof. Like all these things come back later. Brubaker doesn't waste any panels. Everything that you're reading has a purpose. You may not understand what that is. You might think, oh, this is just to set up some flavor for the character. But it comes back. We'll get to the second issue, part 2. So they're willing to listen to Tracy to take a driver. They need a driver, but they're skeptical. They're criminals. They don't quite trust him. So earlier, Tracy had bought a car. There's some cool writing about how Brubaker describes like why he buys a Dodge Charger and all this stuff, and I think that's pretty cool. That's flavor, I think, for people to read. We don't need to discuss that here unless you feel it's important. But ultimately, I thought there was a cool scene here where Tracy's like, I'm going to show my stuff and prove myself. And he cuts off a police officer and runs a red light while she's in the car with him. And she's just freaking out. Like, what are you doing? Are you retarded? And he's like, I can't ditch a cop. What use am I? Thought you wanted to see how good I was. Sure, I'd just rather not get arrested finding out. I'll make you a deal. If we get busted, you don't have to hire me. I thought that was a cool. But instantly, you need to see the next panel after that. She just eyeballs him. And you're like, oh man, she's just getting the hots. And he gets away because that's the way things go. We get some flashback scenes of how he bought the car in the first place. He ditches the cop. She's impressed, and we get a scene here with Leo from the Coward series in jail, and it's explained in the story that Sam needs some references to go with his fake identity. he needs some references, and his reference is going to be Leo. And Leo's a highly respected criminal. Everyone thinks he's great. He's great at what he does, and he also doesn't fuck people over. So in the criminal society, it's a good reference, I suppose. And so they have their talks here. Plus, Leo, his ex-partner, was Tracy's brother. So we get some flashbacks of the kids, and this is to set up some of the personality of Tracy and Ricky, his little brother, who's really not in the story, but he's just sort of a, he's a, I don't want to say a plot device, but he's the backstory. He's a motive. And we get some of the tragic story about these kids who are raised by their shitty father, Lawless. They end up getting arrested at one point. Tracy's actually over 18. So Ricky only has to go to juvie. Tracy's got to go to jail, but he cuts a deal to go to the military instead. And the military just turns an already kind of shitty, broken person. They take a broken person and they brutalize him. They talk about, there's in a few panels they talk about, like here in Bosnia, Tracy had seen things that he had never imagined. Things his father hadn't seen in Vietnam, even things that did in fact phase him. And you get the sense when you're reading the book, you're like, Jesus, what the hell did he see over there? And it just helps lend to that understanding that he's a cold-hearted bastard. Like he's not going to get held back by emotion. So we get into the part of the story where the crew's going to plan their heist and do all the stuff. So that's
before you get to that.
Yeah.
Can I just point out that the prison scene had the one laugh out loud moment of the series when Leo says, "I hesitate to point out the obvious," and Tracy says, "No, you can do this from in here."
Oh yeah, that was funny because like, I need your help, and he's like,
Yeah, that line cracked me up, and that's something you don't get a lot of. It's like, here's a question for you: more laughs, a Brubaker criminal book or a season of 24? The answer is usually
Brubaker.
tied at 0.
I don't know.
So this,
you're right though. He puts in a laugh, but it's not in a silly way. It's very appropriate for the story.
But laughs are few and far between in a Brubaker book, and that was a standout line for me.
Yeah, I agree. We'll get back to that when we start discussing what we liked about this. So we get the planning stages. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, and how it's all going to go down. If you like crime stories, the chances are this is part of the stuff that you really like. It's something I really dig on whenever they're going to do the job. I like knowing, here's how we're going to do it. You're like, oh, okay. So, you start thinking, is that really going to work? And they need to break. It's a 2-part job. Part 1 is they need to break the 5th member of the crew out of prison. And it's like, what are you doing? And the plan is he's going to fake a heart attack, to which case that he'll be sent to the hospital, the ambulance, and they will raid the ambulance and while it's en route. And that's the whole thing. So the plan starts going. Tracy is also the gunman. He ends up shooting the tires out. They're like, whoa, you really good shot. Like, we just thought you were a driver. And the idea is that now they've got a flat because they have a high profile criminal. They got to call a replacement ambulance to come and switch it over. They've already previously during the day stolen an ambulance. So they show up and rob these guys. I thought it was pretty cool. They, they have them turn around. They don't look. They're taking them away. And as the ambulance crew and the guard is turned around, the other part of the crew show up in a little Toyota and actually take, I think it's named Simon, the 5th guy, away. So no one knows that even exists. I thought that was a really clever thing. I like when a crime feels clever. If I'm the reader and I'm like, oh, that might work. If you read one of these stories and you're like, oh my god, that would never work, it immediately takes you out of the story. You're like, this this is a stupid crime. But they pull it off. They take the ambulance off to some slum yard area, some old used port. I don't know what it is. And they're gonna burn it, to hide the evidence. We get some more flirting between Tracy and Mallory. She's definitely, you can start seeing, has a thing for him, because that old saying that women like the bad guy. Tracy is like the epitome of that. And but there is a informant that apparently like a bum that sleeps there, and calls it in and says, hey, that what we were looking for, that just saw him here. So he calls it in, and now we know that someone's spilled the beans on Tracy, and we know that's going to come back to haunt him. So that is the end of book 2. What was this? I know you talked about the little comedy bit already, but what about anything else in this issue that stood out to you?
Something, and I might just be reading too deep into this, but I did notice that they made it a point to mention what Simon was. He was basically in jail because he violated his parole by drinking. So I got the impression that he wasn't exactly at the top of the FBI's most wanted list, because I would imagine if a guy is, you know, if he's enough of a criminal to where, if he'd been like a real hardened criminal, when the ambulance went to when they went to take him from the prison to the ER, that they probably would have alerted law enforcement to like keep catch up with him, whatever, to make sure nothing goes wrong. Because I'm sure that in some cases, I'm sure that goes through the mind of either the prison officials or whomever. So there was nobody there with that gave him the time to pull it off before any police could be called. Again, I might have been reading too much into that, but I just, like I said, if that guy had been like a mass murder or something like that, I bet they have the they probably dispatched the police to meet them there at the hospital or to get
Right.
there.
And he might
Just
even had like an armed escort
right, and
of
there
the
was, and it
ambulance.
was, but he's just some you know drunken fool who's in. They didn't say what he was in for, but I mean violating parole, but what he was out on parole for. So I'm guessing he criminal, yes, but probably not a violent, hardened criminal. And I think that's probably why they took the time to say why he was back in prison. So it kind of worked. It kind of fit the story.
No, that's a very good point. And it's one of those things that Brubaker so effectively sells you on, the believability. Like, oh yeah, this would, because if you are a person, you're like, wait a second, really? They're just transporting him in an ambulance. There's no police. Well, you just answered it. That's why. Like, he's just a dude who like violated his parole by drinking. Like, he's not, you know, FBI's most wanted. So these are things that Ed always covers his bases, I think, to help you not be pulled out and go, that wouldn't work, or that doesn't make sense. It all does, at least to me.
Yeah.
One of the things I really liked, I don't know if it was like the most entertaining part of the book, but this little flashback sequence I have up on the screen with little Ricky and his dad, and his dad was trying to make him kill pigeons, with the gun, and they talk about how, like, Ricky just didn't, he didn't like taking lives, and you can sense that this was a kid who had a good heart. It was a good kid. And was broken. Like, he's a product of society, but directly like his parentage, right? Like, And this is what to me helps me empathize in these stories, because I'm not like, oh, you're just some asshole who decided to start hurting people, whatever. Like you're witnessing like these kids came from something, and oftentimes I think we forget about that when we see like criminals and stuff. We're like, oh, they're just bad dudes, and it's like, well, but why are they bad dudes? Not all, everyone has the benefit of a nice, wholesome upbringing, you know. And while it's true, you're an adult, you're responsible for your own actions. I think that's different in reality. Like, okay, you broke the law, you hurt people, maybe you need to go to jail, whatever. But this is fiction. These people don't really exist. So no justice really needs to happen. Um, but you as the reader need to feel that they get what they, you need to feel that they deserve something, and what they deserve is based on those feelings, because it's all fiction. And this makes you feel a little bit towards Tracy, as far as like he's gonna help his brother because his brother is his victim. So you have empathy towards that. You start to see a little bit of humanity in Tracy as he's like feeling sorry for his little brother. I don't know if I'm probably going on too much about that, but I just like that Ed humanizes these characters so that you can feel they're not just, I don't know, they're not just two-dimensional things.
Yeah, well, Ricky and Tracy were raised by an absolute piece of shit. I'm guessing the mother was probably just. I'm sure that their relationship was probably dominant, submissive. He probably just Teague probably just beat her down as well. Ricky probably had more of his mother in him, so he was more sensitive. Tracy probably had more of his dad in him, and just I guess was able to shut it out better than Ricky. And it's just I'm guessing just it just snowballed for Ricky to become a far worse person than his brother. You know how he got to that point. I can't remember if that's explained in later um stories or not. Guess we'll find out at some point. But got the impression that yeah, I said if if Ricky had been separated from his family, he might have had a chance to turn out differently. Yeah, I think Tracy was just like I said. It's almost like got the impression that Tracy was I don't know more dead inside from young adolescence, which probably works in his favor you know as he goes through life.
Right. And one final little thing for me, this is just stupid because it's me, but I like that this is the second book that has a Mini Cooper. That looks like my car right there. So I'm a Mini fan. So I'm like, yeah, Sean Phillips likes minis. Throws them in his in his book. Not that that matters. Um, so we move on to part 3. It opens up, and we're at a hotel, the Wrigley Rooms by day or week, and we can see that this is where he's staying. And guess what? He's hooked up finally with uh, what's her name, Mallory.
Mallory.
And I should have posted ahead of time. This is a mature audience's book. There will be nudity and sex and violence. So if you're triggered by that, tune off now. This is not for kids. Moving along. So yep. So now Tracy's having a little bit of a kind of a conundrum, because he's starting to feel a little bit of something for this Mallory girl, but yet he's trying to infiltrate this because he feels like he might have to kill all these people because maybe they killed his brother. And so now he's feeling a little bit of like conflict of interest, plus the fact like his brother was with this girl, and like is he kind of betraying the memory of his brother? And you're like, Jesus, this is getting a little complicated. And there's a bunch of money on the floor. I forget. There's a
She wants to test the police response, so they pull an ATM out of the wall
oh,
to
that's
see how
right.
long it'll take the cops to respond.
So the narrative of this book, I love. It's hard when I was remembering the book, but when you're reading it, it's fascinating how he goes back and forth in time. So the scene that we get right now is now, and they're waking up, and you see why is there money on the floor, and then on the right side page, we get the flashback of where she's gonna do another test, and they're waiting for the liquor store owner to close, and he's like, "Why?" He's like, "Because we're gonna rob a bank." And it's like, what? Um, and so they got this device that hooks up to the ATM, pulls it off, and they get all the money out. And the test actually isn't really for Tracy; it's testing the police response. So
Right. He thinks it's another test for him, and she points out, she says, "Not everything's about you. We're testing the cops."
so they scoop up a bunch of the money, and they flee the scene of the crime. Very close by. Again, it's a ballsy thing. They go up into this parking structure, and she's like, "Well, that was a buzz." Uh, and she had said awesome at some point, so she's making fun of her. He's like, "Yeah, awesome." "Oh, shut up, mister. I never smile. You're just jealous that I enjoy my work." The cops show up. "What do you have?" "Feels like 5 minutes." "Almost 6 since the alarm went off." "Those cops are as soft as Play-Doh." "So, now we wait around for them to wrap it up? Could be hours." "Yeah." Oh, that was Tracy, sorry. "Yep, it would draw too much attention to just drive off now. There's a bar down the street. We'll come back." And so they go to the bar, they start flirting, and the next thing they know, they're back at the hotel. And that's how we get to that point where it starts. That's how the narrative comes back full circle. I like that technique, and Brubaker does that throughout this book, where he shows you something, and then he goes back and tells you how you got there. And it just, I don't know, for me, it really worked. We get some more flashbacks of Ricky, Tracy remembering that he actually beat up Ricky too. Now he's conflicted because he's sleeping with the girl. Now Simon is the guy they broke out. He's in charge. He's the guy who does all the planning and stuff, and he doesn't trust Tracy. And we get a tense moment where the crew starts drawing guns, and you can see on the top frame up here, Tracy just that dead eye. Like, you point a gun at me, you better fucking use it. You're gonna die. And so it gets all tense. Things cool down, and Tracy leaves. And they kind of mock him. They're like, "Oh, you gotta fucking think straight. You're not the only guy who's put your thing in her." And they like to say Mallory sleeps around. And Tracy's up. Mallory's like, "Hey, wait up. What's going on?" And she can sense that there's a problem. But she informs him, like, "Look, I've never touched any of those guys." Now, of course, omits Ricky because Ricky's dead, so she's not talking about him. And that's who they were talking about. But since Ricky's dead, and it's kind of a confusing thing. Not really, but it's one of those things where it's like, "Oh yeah, Mallory's, you're not the first person of the crew that she's slept with, but the person they're referring to isn't anyone that's in the crew currently." And she doesn't know that he's his brother, so everyone's kind of skirting around the real issue because no one knows that who he really is. So she tries to confide in him, that she's, it doesn't have to be an issue, everything's fine, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't even have to be a thing. And so they continue to hook up. She wants to know where he's got the scars. We see a flashback where he apparently saved some woman. And then he goes on a walk because he can't sleep at night. He's got dreams because he's traumatized. Probably a little bit of PTSD. And he goes off a walk in the middle of the night, and some dudes show up and just start shooting him. But Tracy's a cold-hearted killer. He takes a couple of them down, and we start getting some flashbacks of some of these guys. They're back at the auto shop that he bought his car from with cash, and they're basically like handed over, and so something big's going on. Tracy manages to get away from these guys, kill them, but he's a little worried because people are onto him.
Real quick,
Yeah.
there is a line where they're taking the money back, and he mentions, he goes, "It's a good thing you didn't try to spend any of it." That will come into play in a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, good point. Um, let's see. So Tracy immediately comes back, and she's like, "Oh wow, that was quick. Barely had time to take a shower. Where's your coffee?" Because he said he was gonna go get coffee. Oh yeah, I was thinking, let's go out for breakfast. And he's got the shit-eating grin. So he's covering things up, but he doesn't want her to get hurt. And then we cut over to Mr. Hyde, Sebastian Hyde, and this is a pissed off guy, and he wants to know why his men are dead. He's like, he says, yes, and I was under the impression that Jerry was good at what he does. And his assistant's like, he was. Then who the hell is this Sam West person, and how does he just kill foreign trained men and just walk away? I don't know, sir. Shit. I'll bet the son of a bitch doesn't even know what he stole. Well, only a bank would be able to tell. Then we cut over to the guy who made the fake IDs for him. Counterfeit? Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Alluding to what Erica just mentioned about trying to spend the money. And this is where Tracy has unbewittingly gotten himself into something very serious because he doesn't think. And that is the end of book 3. So, what do we need to talk about on this particular issue?
Well, it's all starting to come together. I did. There was a scene when Mallory meets up with him after he leaves the confrontation with the other gang members, when she was basically saying, look, is that they think you remind him of something, or of somebody or something like that. He goes, it's no big deal. And he goes, it's a big deal when one of them puts a gun to my head. And she's like, oh shit, how much did I miss? So I thought that was a neat touch there, because I like that. Because you don't want to point that finger at me and then click, there's a gun pointed at his head. Again, like I said, this, the interaction with the gang, the don't trust anybody part of it, and then, like I said, it's just Jerry's guys that come after him. It gives you a great indication of just how capable Tracy is when he can get ambushed by 4 armed men, and he's the last man standing.
Right, 4-armed professionals.
Yeah,
like,
and obviously Tracy doesn't. His gun's his American Express. He never leaves home without it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, everything that is pretty straightforward. I think I probably talked too much about it when I was doing the synopsis. I felt like this issue was all about what haunts him and setting up how that's going to come into play. Seeing the flashbacks, and how he can't sleep. Seeing that there's something else going on that he wasn't even aware about. People are coming after him. And it really throws a wrench into things. I mean, he's already got a complicated thing with this infiltrating this this crew, and doing this job, and then trying to figure out if they killed his brother. Now he's like, what about this girl? I'm kind of falling for this girl, but she could be, I might have to kill her, and then all of a sudden this happens. And you're like, Jesus. You just effectively get communicated how big this is. Like, this is not a small time. Like, he pissed off some powerful people.
It's a good point you had about it. So that this issue could have been titled "The Ghosts That Haunt Me." That's a good synopsis of that issue.
All right, well, moving along into issue 4 of 5. The only person that Tracy was ever afraid of was his father. His earliest memories were vague, hazy images at best, but he remembered screaming. He remembered his father's voice yelling. He remembered fear, the fear so total that he was wrapped in it. So we get this flashback, and we get to note that the only person Tracy's ever been afraid of was his dad. And so I guess we can effectively say Tracy has daddy issues. And it's a simple enough thing. It's 2 pages of information, but I think this is what sparked Tracy to be just not right in the head and just be the guy that he is. And again, I think it's part of that humanity. It's an ugly side of humanity that we don't like to see. We don't wish on anyone, but it helps us to have some empathy for the character, that he's not just some cold-hearted bastard that he's had shit in his life that he's dealing with. He contacts I wish I could remember the
Jacob.
name. Jacob, the guy who did the IDs and stuff for him. And Jacob's pissed because he had to fill out a police report and all this stuff because he tried to deposit the money and it was counterfeit. And this is all news to Tracy. So Tracy wants to figure out. He's also still investigating the crew. So he's talking to, I hate to say the black guy, but I don't remember the guy's name.
Nelson.
Nelson on the crew. And Nelson was the guy who drew a gun on him. He's kind of apologizing also. They have a little bit of man-to-man. We get some interaction with what's his name? The bartender. What is it? Gnarly, that's right. He's got a weird name. I should remember that because I'm from Southern California. Gnarly has a really cool dialogue with Tracy, because we remember up to this point we've had 3 issues of Tracy just being completely reinforced to us as the badass of badasses, the cold-hearted guy that can stare down lions. He just and he is talking to Gnarly, who earlier he's like, yeah, Gnarly doesn't recognize me. No one recognizes him. That's part of the thing. And he's like, can I get another pint of Guinness? You sure can, Tracy. Excuse me? Yeah, I recognize you. Not that you look much like the kid I remember. Gnarly, who have you told? Think I'd be in business if I had talked to people about people? I'm neutral, kid. I'm Switzerland. To be honest, I didn't really know until the other day. Just knew you were familiar. Then some hard cases came in asking about a guy with a scar. A guy named Sam. Shit. That clinched it. Men with guns coming to my bar looking for you. Knew you had to be a Lawless. You know who the guys were working for? No? And I don't want to know either. I'm talking to you for one reason, Mallory. I don't know what you're up to, but I know it ain't good. And if anything happens to that girl, he clenches his fist. Not even the army will be able to save you this time. Understand me? Tracy's just like, Jesus, you really don't remember me. And I just thought that was a great bit. Probably should have saved that to the after cat part, but
Ash, I will be back in 1 minute. Just keep the synopsis going.
Sounds good. So we get this other part here where Tracy's kicking back on the couch and Mallory shows up and she's like, so what do you think? Oh, come on. Don't tell me this doesn't do anything for you. She's in the nun outfit. And this is all part of their job, but she's flirting with him. And let's see. There's some conversation that goes on. I don't really know what more to go. Meantime, in the middle of the night, Tracy wakes up, and this is a big crux. He wakes up and goes on his walk or whatever. She wakes up this time, and she's alone. It says she knows that he has trouble sleeping, that he has terrible nightmares. She figures he's probably out walking, out in the cold and the snow. But she's not searching his room, she tells herself. She's just looking for a lighter. Fuck. and she sees the picture. Meanwhile, we see Tracy at the graveyard looking down the gravestone, Teague Lawless. So it's his dad. We get some flashbacks of Teague and Ricky back in the old days. Ricky was a getaway driver. And he's putting a flower down. He's just remembering the one time that Ricky hit him was at the funeral for his mother, and he reminisces about how his brother probably actually got the real raw end of the deal. That sorry, Ricky wasn't the getaway driver. Tracy was. Ricky was stuck at home with the mom, and then he probably had the real raw end of the deal because that was probably a lot harder. And Ricky would have loved impressing his dad and driving and stuff. And anyways, so we get a lot of that time again. Again, it reinforces the motives and the personality of these characters. And he leaves the funeral, and we see Mallory. She's out in the car. She's spotted him. And as Tracy walks away, she goes up to see where he was, what he was looking at, and she sees the gravestone. She's like, oh, shit. She's crying because now she knows that he's Ricky's brother. So Tracy tells himself that Simon doesn't have to, he's not going to be involved until after the whole run is done. So he's not going to be needed. So he can go and get answers from him. So he goes and finds him, sees him doing some pervy shit. And then we cut away over to, what was his name? Jacob, the guy who gave him all the fake IDs. And we see some of those professionals again. They're roughing him up, trying to get some information. We cut back to Tracy, who catches Simon as he's letting the girls go. And he's like, fuck are you doing here, boy? I need to talk to you. You're supposed to be getting ready. There's time. What is this? I want you to tell me something. Was it you who killed my brother? Huh? And, yeah, Tracy's, he's a violent mofo. And he does Simon pretty bad getting information. And he's like, you like to talk? Keep it up. Fuck you. I'm not telling you shit, you backstabbing fuck. And he spits. And Tracy's just like, yeah, you will. You're like, oh, man. Eric, you back?
Yeah.
All right. What about this book do we need to talk about?
Okay. I think this issue, remember before we start talking about the book itself, I mentioned that one of the things I like about Brubaker books is, there are bad guys and worse guys, but even the worst guys have, like I said, the sliding scale of morality or whatever. Nelson apologizing to Tracy, I thought was a really nice touch, because it tells you that these guys aren't complete amoral monsters, that they're actually people with, human characteristics as well. I thought that was a nice touch. But my favorite part was when Gnarly reveals to Tracy that he knows who he is, and you see it. You see the little girl at the end of the bar for one panel, and we saw her earlier in an earlier issue, but exactly who Gnarly's talking about. I said how protective he's become of this little girl, and I said even though he's known the family, I know he knew Ricky, and I know he probably knew of Tracy before. It's like none of that matters. You do anything to hurt this little girl, you're dead. And you get the feeling that although you never see him have to prove it, you kind of get the feeling he could.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty cool. And I thought it was, and you now I kind of got the feeling 4 issues in that Jacob is just a schlub. That he's this guy is just like, he's like the designated get dumped on guy in this series.
Yeah, poor
Because like I
guy.
said,
He's just there,
he
like
gets
he's just a nerd. He knows how to like all the techno stuff. He knows how to make the fake IDs and get the credit cards. And he's been out of the business for like 5 years. And
and then
Tracy
he
kind of
gets drugged back in,
he's drugged back
paid in
in.
counterfeit bills, gets his nose broken. I mean, the poor guy's already a cripple. So it's like, what more can you do to this poor guy?
Yeah, it's he didn't do anything wrong. He's the true victim of this story. Um, but
Yes.
we don't care about him because he's a nerd. Um,
Yeah, take that, nerd.
stupid nerd. Ronnie had a comment earlier that's fitting to what you had just said. She says that Brubaker doesn't just make the bad guys one-sided and only evil. They have shades of gray and have what might be redeeming qualities, though the bad side does outweigh them. And I
Yeah,
think
well, criminals don't spend 24/7 criminaling. So I said that's kind of something that other writers lose sight of. Brubaker never does. That even in the planning of their operation, there is time to you know, to show a little bit of humanity. Like in Nelson's case, maybe in a different life, Nelson and Tracy, could be friends. Yeah, because I said one of the things, everybody's got people in their lives that they've been in a fist fight with, and then were either friends before and then after. And so I said, they had that confrontation where he put the gun to his head, then apologized for it. Showing that it's that I'm not saying he felt remorse, but it's like you know it's it kind of humanized Nelson a little bit. And then, Tracy, yeah, yeah, don't worry about it. No, you guys are a tight crew. Now, he might have just been doing that to, keep, trying to get information, but it kind of felt like a human moment in a book where, that there's not, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to borrow one of your lines. I'm getting in the weeds.
now
Um,
you know what it's like. You know what it's like.
yeah, I'm watching too much Ash.
they
Yeah, but
they
it's just,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Okay, well, so they kind of echo on this. We kind of skipped over in the beginning. This part of the book is an echo actually to the first issue. When he sees the crew from the get go, there's some narration about how these crews, they get together and they have to work together and they end up depending on each other and they're kind of like a family. And Brubaker talks about that, makes that analogy, and I think that's kind of what you're getting to a little bit here, is that in order to have family, you have to have a little bit of humanity. And it's true, like they they do things that aren't right. They rob people and things like that, but they aren't just completely diabolical. They're just their moral compass is a little askew. And this is what they do. But even criminals have to have some sort of order to function. Otherwise, everyone would just be murdering everyone all the time, and there wouldn't be anyone left. So yeah, I think he kind of touches on that, and you're right. I think Nelson's kind of the character that he's like the one guy I would want on my crew. He seems like the only level-headed guy. He's like, I just want to make some money. That's it. I'm not here to cause any problems.
He stood up for the guy that he'd been partnered with longer because the new guy was getting in his face. So that showed a loyalty. You have to earn his loyalty,
Right.
and earn his trust. So that was kind of like I don't know, showing the pecking order or showing, yeah. So yeah, I agree. Nelson probably is the guy that, if there's anybody you want to take with you going forward, it probably would have been him.
So we get a little bit of some outrage moments of Mallory being a woman who seduces men. And thought that was pretty interesting. We get a little bit of like, oh yeah, she's trying to turn him on by the whole woman in a nun fantasy. She even asks him, you got at least one nun fantasy. I like in this book, I feel like it shouldn't have to be said, but we live in 2021, and it's just like men are men and women are women, and no one's ashamed of either one. Like, it's so refreshing. Um, but man, this scene, first of all, you're feeling the pain of for Tracy and his loss of his brother and his whole fucked up life, and he's seeing the gravestone of his dad. But when Mallory follows him and discovers, where was it? And she's like, oh, she sees the gravestone, and you know what she's looking at. She's like, oh shit, she's crying. You know, like you can feel like there's real human emotion there, because she feels something. And that's another thing that seems like thematic in these Brubaker stories. Does the guy ever get the girl in any of these stories? either the guy dies or the girl dies or something happens. Like they can't be together because of some shitty circle. Like you're just like constantly. It almost seems like this is like Brubaker saying, and it's like, damn it, maybe these two could have found some happiness together, but we'll see.
Well, I guess what you're saying is the only time in this story that there was a happy ending would have been if Tracy had answered wrong. Do you remember the line which said, "Careful though, answer wrong, and Sister Mallory from Our Lady of Multiple Orgasms will be dealing out discipline."
Yeah, that was a great line. So many great lines in this book. I wish I could just read the book out loud. You know, I just love to read this.
Well, I have noticed you've lapsed into story time several times during this, and I think that kind of tells how much you enjoy this.
For
That I think
sure.
you probably
I
would
just
be
feel like
just as happy reading.
I can't describe some of the things. I feel like I just need to read the parts, and I don't necessarily like the whole book, but like that scene. Like I could tell you how cool it was that Gnarly stood up to, but when you read the scene yourself and how it plays off, I think it has more impact. So we get into the fifth and the final issue here, where everything's going to come to a head, and this Tracy Lawless was going to be a serious pain in the ass. That's what Chester was thinking when he dialed the big man's number. So we see Chester, one of the professionals that work for I forget that guy's name. Anyways, the big boss.
Sebastian Hyde.
Sebastian Hyde, that's right. Thank you. So bad with names.
I'm thinking that's the only reason why I'm here tonight.
You're the name man.
I'm here for identity support.
You're the name dropper. So he's shown up. He's at Simon's place. He's like, yeah, it's me. I'm at the place they said. Yeah, he's here. He ain't going anywhere. He got himself killed. And just like looking at his hand, you can see the work that Tracy did on this guy. Every finger is broken and contorted. Took some time doing it too. Broken fingers, thumbs. This was some nasty ass caveman shit. It's like, damn. We get the narrative comes over to what the heist is about. Simon had been planning this heist for years, ever since he found out how much cash that St. Dominic's Cathedral black tie benefit usually took in. So every Christmas Eve, this cathedral has a big, expensive dinner, $1,000 a plate, cash only, yada, yada, yada. And of course, the priest is crooked, and they collect all this money. And Simon had figured out how this all went down. They got a contact at the bank. They know when the shipment's going to arrive. So the whole thing is the bank's going to be a skeleton crew because it's Christmas Eve. It's nighttime. There's no one going to be around. The only people at the bank are the people on the pay that are taking this cash, and it's all big extortion scam, yada, yada, yada. And so that's why they're dressed up as a nun and a priest. So they knock on the thing, and it's like, bank says, I can't open the doors. But they play it off. Oh, but we forgot one of the deposit bags. Father Grant had us rush right over. I'm like, oh, shit. Oh, more money? Okay. We'll open the doors. So they give him the money, and it's like, freeze, motherfuckers. And It's more Pulp Fiction.
I just love the one guy. Oh, fuck me.
Yeah, the nun's got the two guns. And then we got the black, what do they call him? Chocolate Santa.
Yeah.
It's just awesome.
You getting a lump of coal now, motherfucker.
The lines in this, God, I want to see Quentin Tarantino do an Ed Brubaker.
The line right there, he goes, good, I'll use it to keep my money warm. That's right. Okay, I take that back. There were a couple funnies in this.
There is, and it's never played funny though. Like it's all serious, but it's funny in its seriousness. So Tracy is the wheelman, so he's behind the car, and he's ready to go. They're bringing out the money, and there's cops coming, and Mallory's like, "What the fuck?" Tracy has a moment. I'm trying to see where it is.
Because it would have all gone perfectly if Tracy hadn't called 911 4 minutes ago. So that's...
Yeah, I was trying to find that line. I don't remember exactly what that was, but so yeah, he had called 911. So the cops show up and they all come out, and the cops are there and say, "What the fuck?" But he's like, "Get in!" So he saves Mallory and he drives away, and the other two walk out and they're like, "What's going on? Oh shit, this is not happening." So the cops arrest them. They're like, "Fuck it," and then a shootout goes down. And Mallory's all pissed off because, these are her partners. Like, she's hot on Tracy, but she's not about to betray her friends. She's like, "You fucking bastard. Shut up. Piece of shit, you didn't. Shut up." He points a gun, and she's like, "Whoa. I'm trying to drive." And she's just not having it. She's like, "Fuck, damn you." And they're fighting in the car, and cars are crashing. And we see, looks like Chester is listening in on the police scanner. And Tracy's taking Mallory somewhere. Where are they going? It's the Lawless family home. And he's got a gun, and he's asking her, "Just tell me. Don't make me hurt you, Mallory." He wants to know, did you kill my brother? And so we get this little backstory thing that's pretty cool, that basically tells the whole story, kind of about everything. And she kind of confesses everything, and she basically admits that she did it. That's the whole thing. It's like, I'm the one. You're going around killing everyone else, but I'm the one who did it. She's like, "Well, go ahead and you fucking do it. Set it right. Be the person. Get the right person. I deserve it." She's crying. Tracy just looks at her and says, "Get out of here, Mallory." "What?" "Just fucking go before I change my mind. You're a bastard." "I know." And so she leaves. And now Chester's outside waiting for her. Got a gun to her head. And he's going to fucking kill her. He's like, "I'll put a bullet in her head." And he's like, "Don't. Up to you. Got a man who needs to see you. Come along nicely. She lives. Fine, let's go." So they go, and they go talk to,
Sebastian Hyde.
Sebastian Hyde. Thanks, name dropper. They go to Sebastian Hyde. If I was prepared, I would have written all these names down. And Sebastian Hyde asks about him. They have a talk, and basically Sebastian's like, "Look, your brother owed me some money. I could use a man like you, so I don't want to kill you. You come work for me." And Tracy kind of agrees, and sees Mallory off, gives her the money. It's like, "Look, here's all the money. I wasn't doing this for the money." She's still pissed. She's like, "Go to hell," slaps him, and takes the money. But you can see, like, she's heartbroken. Like, this is not how she wanted things to go down. And then we get the narration. Revenge. That's what he had come here for. But it didn't really exist, did it? Just empty regret and bitter heartbreak wandering the streets. The city around him, white and gray and cold, felt suddenly small. Hyde had been right about family. There was no escaping it, even when there was no one left to run from the end. And so now Tracy had come here to set things right for his brother and ends up being trapped in the whole thing. And like I said before, man, these people in these books all get what they deserve. What do we need to talk about, Eric?
Honestly, it correct me. I might be wrong about this, but if I can say there's one thing that just maybe was too convenient, was that the guys that he robbed the counterfeit money from ended up working for a guy who his brother owed money to. That might have been a little bit too pat, but what the heck?
I can see where you would think that, but I imagine in a city like this, there's probably only so many criminals that are.
Wasn't he out of town on his way to the city when he robbed them? Didn't he get back on the bus and continue, riding towards the city?
Yes, but remember, he was at a port, and the whole reason he was robbing is because the port is where they do the money laundering for overseas. And there's a point where he had said this time he was catching money coming in instead of going out. And so apparently the way I understood it was that money was going to Sebastian, and he basically stole it before it ever got to him.
Right. I mean, I'm saying it's kind of coincidental, but
Sure.
again, like I said, if that's the only nit I can pick in this story, I am truly nitpicking for the sake of
Right.
nitpicking. So I said, I love this
I guess
story.
I'm only saying that didn't phase me because I imagine criminal enterprises of this nature aren't all over the place. Like there's a few of them, and so when you run into one, it's the one. And I'm sure Ricky probably got his, he was probably in a lot of people's businesses. So, you're right. It kind of feels that way, but it was all okay. But what about the issue itself?
Um, yeah, you said it best before we started. Everybody tends to get what they deserve. Now, I kind of felt bad that Nelson went out the way he did, but he made the decision to fire on him instead of just putting the gun down and rooming with Leo for a while. Yeah, that's a Gray I didn't care about. Yeah, hell, yeah, he was crap. But kind of felt bad that Nelson had to eat lead. Um, I said it just yeah, it was a nice wrap up. I thought it was a neat touch to where Tracy basically set him up. And it was again he does he does the right thing in letting her go, and then you realize he's not quite as much of a bastard as she had just proclaimed, because he basically, you know, at least on the surface, by agreeing to go see the guy, he's basically screwing himself. But then again, if he hadn't, they probably find him at some point anyway. So he was kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't, as far as the situation with Chester and Mallory. So yeah, I don't know if it was so much altruism, because he might as well have been altruistic, because he was going to get brought before Sebastian at some point, regardless. So he at least did the right thing and negotiated Mallory's freedom. Instead of just like looking the other way and letting Chester put one in her.
What did you think about this story sequence where um, she basically tells him the story about her brother or his brother, um, and basically all the involvement and his involvement with her, his involvement with the crew. Um, what did you think? I mean, I particularly like this. I didn't really cover it in the synopsis part, but
Well,
I felt like you got a
What?
really strong feeling for who this character was, and I think it was like um, she gave Tracy kind of what he was looking for, that missing void, because he was feeling guilty for missing that whole year where he was locked away. Um, did it come across like that to you at all, or do you have a different take?
When she was, telling the story, I got the feeling that by the end, any sympathy you may have had for Ricky because of the way he was brought up vanished when he just beat the hell out of her and then said, "Come on." And she goes, "You're taking me with you?" He goes, "Of course, baby. I love you." And it's just the look on his face in that panel. And then she just, said, shoots him because he goes, "I didn't want to be loved like that anymore," whatever what she said.
Right.
That I think you realize that, he had reached a point where, like I said, there was no coming back. He was done, too broken. And, I said, that's, you having I'm making air quotes again, the love of a good woman wasn't enough. He was just an irredeemable bastard at that point. And and I think that's what can, I don't know if Tracy had planned to kill Mallory after he got done with Simon, because I'm sure you kind of have to wonder what Simon said to get Tracy to murder him as brutally as he did. But then, so you thought if he was that angry when he left Simon, that Mallory was toast. But then after the story, Tracy realized, no, I can't kill her. My brother just really was a broken piece of shit. And that's why he let her go.
I got a little bit of a sense too that he was kind of seeing himself echoed in that story, right? Because it's the same type of thing just happened where he calls the 911, gets everyone arrested, but he takes her. He's like, you can get away. Everyone else is getting arrested, but you come with me because I like you. So you're not going to go to jail. Just those other guys. Like, it was kind of a fucked up situation, right? Like, how is she more innocent than them?
No, I think he took her because I think somewhere in his mind still is like, I want to kill you myself.
Hmm.
But
I
then
didn't
the
get that.
story,
I was getting the whole time that he didn't want to kill her. Like he was driven to like this is what I have to do because if you kill my brother, I got to kill you. But he was hoping that wasn't the case. Like the whole time he's like hoping he's going to be proven wrong about her. You know? Like he feels like he's got to kill her, but maybe there's something
right?
that's
That's
gonna
my point. She hadn't told her side of the story yet, and I think that's what he wanted to hear, so he could decide if she lived or died. I think that's why he had to pull her out of there because now again, it goes back to what we were talking about when we did, Coward. Um, that or no, is it no, might have been when we were doing Reckless, where it was written to where it could be interpreted one of two ways, and you may not be wrong with either. That you could read that as he wanted to save her, or you could read that as he wanted to do it himself, but give her a chance basically to tell her side before he made up his mind. And he couldn't do that if she were in jail because he couldn't get at her if that was what he still intended to do. But her side of the story made it clear that, that like I said, his brother was just broken. And all of a sudden, the need for revenge was just done. I mean, it's just like you just
but how did he know that the other two guys didn't kill him?
no, because Simon had told him.
Oh, that's true. Good
That's why
point.
he killed him
Good point. Good point.
before he killed him. So he again. So I said that's why he had that she had to take he had to take her with him. Yeah, and it's just it's almost like when she told the story. If you could put sound effects in comic books, you would just hear the sound of a balloon deflating, and that would signify his revenge quest, just getting the air let out of it.
Yeah,
And
because I think my take on this is that he was expecting that his brother got killed because of some heartless assholes who were just deserved to die. Like, like the first guy that he kills, who's just a fucking prick.
and he turns out his brother is that heartless asshole.
And Mallory is everything but. She's completely honorable. She stands up for the right thing. I mean, she's a criminal. She robs banks and stuff, but she doesn't fuck anyone over. She's always been honest with him at every turn, and even when she asks a question about his brother, she tells him the story. She even says to him, "You're killing the wrong people. You need to kill me. I'm the one that deserves it. Go ahead." She faces it. She doesn't try to hide from it and lie or anything. And I think part of him realizes that, wait a second, this is a good person. I can't be killing her because my brother fucking beat the shit out of her and did all these things. And, and we also get this little flashback scene, which I think is relevant to that, about how he's got those scars. Remember, because he rescues that girl from the fire. And I think there's a little bit of a savior complex in Tracy. He wants to save Mallory like he saved that girl.
Yeah, I can see that.
So even though he's a fucked up individual, he still has that instinct to save the girl. Even if it means now he's got to live as a criminal.
Yeah.
Wow, this is a good book. I really enjoyed reading it. Let's see. Dominic says the humor is hilarious and it doesn't feel forced.
Scale of 5. What do you give it?
Out of 5? I give this a 5. The real question is, because I have a feeling a lot of Brubaker's books are going to be 5s.
Yeah.
The real question is, we've got 3 episodes so far. And we'll include Pulp, because Pulp was on the Unnamed Indie Comic Show. So I'll count 4 books. Pulp, Reckless, Coward, Lawless. I want you to put them in order from least to best of those 4. And you guys in the audience, you guys can put your orders too. I'd be curious if anyone has had those. We can listen to Eric and see if he can. His brain is, gears are grinding right now.
I'm going to go number 4, Reckless. Number 3, I'm gonna say
It's
Coward.
Tough. It's so tough.
Coward and Lawless are tied.
No ties. Come on.
Don't tell me what I can and cannot do, mister. I'm the only one that showed up for you tonight.
Which is why you're the only one I can tell.
And Pulp. That's true. and you're the only one I can say sod off. And Pulp being the best.
All right. My picks, I'm going to pick Lawless, Coward, Reckless, and Pulp. So an exact reverse order of the way we read them is mine. But again, I think all of them are 5 stars. It's not like, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way. It's not like, oh, one's bad or anything. It's just, if I had to pick, favorites or best, and
yeah, it's a tough choice. It's like trying to pick your favorite of what are they when you have 4 kids, quintuplets or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. It's a hard choice to make. I mean, there's not a one of these 4 that I won't read again, and not for a CriminalCast, but just because I want to read them again. That's
for sure. I think the only reason I give the other ones like Reckless and Pulp higher marks, honestly, is because I just feel when I'm reading these, they're all amazing, but I can really feel where Phillips and Brubaker have grown as storytelling. The art is improved. These are earlier works, right? These are what, from 2006? They're I forget what these are from exactly, but I think these are like at least 10 years old. Um, Phillips has gotten better as an
Oh,
artist.
yeah, they definitely are.
Um, and I think Brubaker is just the scripts are getting tighter. You know, um, some of these they're just fantastic, but I just feel like, oh wow, you're even getting better, which is a great thing because some writers aren't getting better. Some of my favorites, unfortunately. Um, and I just love these characters. Every single book that he does, I love the characters. He's so good. Writers, take notice. You have to be able to devise and create good characters. We have to be able to relate to them and like them, even if they're bastards. You have to be able to like them in their bastardness. Um, that's one of these books shine because the plot, of course, is going to take you. It's a fun story, but it's because we care about these characters that takes it over the edge. I really cared what happened to Tracy and Mallory. And from my own personal testimony, I love that Brubaker, I said it before, he can write men like men and women like women. I don't feel like there's a hint of like, oh, women can be just as good as men and as a patriot. Like, there's none of that. There's no shame. Like, never once does Mallory ever feel like she has to prove herself in a man's world or anything, or that how I'm not gonna be trying to act like a woman for you. Like no, it's just she's what she is, and she's one of the best characters in this book because of that. Because she's a strong character, strong person, strong individual. Um, she's really the only one that gets away. She gets away with all the money. Fantastic, utterly fantastic. Any final thoughts from you, Eric, before we wrap this up with a bun?
Yeah, and I'm guessing I said if they let her go with the money, that kind of tells you that that's not really what Sebastian was after, at least not in this instance. Of course, that wasn't his money in the first place, so he got his counterfeit money back, I suppose. But yeah, just yeah, like I said, and I don't know if the scripts have gotten tighter per se. I'm not that technical,
And that's fine. I'm
as
just
far
telling you my own thoughts.
yeah. So I'm gonna say, I think I think that Brubaker and his writing has been as close to fully formed as it can be, I would say, for close to 20 years now, because I said I am a huge fan of the Captain America run, and that's 15 that started 15 years ago, about the time they started doing these. So I mean, he's been, to me, as good as it gets for that amount of time. I do agree with you that Phillips has I would say he's probably peaked at this point, with Pulp and Reckless, and I think we've got the next one coming in April.
Right.
He was good. Now he's excellent, and his art just fits. I said I can't imagine. I honestly can't imagine a Brubaker story drawn by anybody other than Phillips or Steve Epting at this point, because he did the vast majority of the Cap issues, and he also did Velvet.
Right.
And I think the rest of them have been Phillips. Although I'd have to go back and look at the
Michael
Fade Out,
Lark.
but I'm pretty sure.
Michael Lark, I think, did a couple of stuff with him. His earlier stuff.
Oh yeah, it's Scene of the Crime.
Yeah.
I know Lark was the artist on, and I'll have to go back and read that because I cannot remember anything about that.
All right. Well,
But
I think we should be wrapping this up. It's been a long one. Um, it's been a great pleasure doing this with you, Eric. I hope Skip and Nalo are doing well. Um, for not
especially
sure.
Skip, at least we know where Nalo is.
Do we
I hope
truly?
nothing.
Do we really
Well,
know? How much do
or
we
it was
really
an
know about
intricate
Nalo?
ruse to get out of having to put up with us for 2 hours.
So, but we will definitely make efforts to get them on the next episode. I'm sure both of them are regretting not being able to be here. I certainly am regretting them not being here. I feel their presence is sorely missed. But Eric, it's always a pleasure to do a stream with you. I'm so glad to do one with you, and I'm so glad that we can talk about Brubaker and that you introduced me to my new love in comics.
Well, right back at you, but I do feel the need to point out, Skip, you are on double secret probation.
Double secret.
Double secret probation, like on Animal House.
Oh, it's been
It's
so
like,
long. I don't even remember. Um,
he's like, yeah, what was the name of the fraternity? Now, Skip, I hope everything's all right. If you happen to be listening in, DM Ash, let him know. Because I said you guys were definitely missed tonight. It did give us the rare opportunity to, blather more than usual. But yeah, definitely want you back for the next one.
hopefully, you didn't get tossed off a building into a dumpster to rot away into a what is it? A trash pile,
Right?
a landfill. Skip was
No,
our
I
getaway
said
driver.
this was fun.
Yeah, it's always fun, man. Talking Brubaker is a blast. If you guys aren't reading these Brubaker books, get on them. This was volume 2. We're going to be doing all of them. So I don't know what you're waiting for. Go read them. Come back, join in on the fun, join in with us on the discussion. Tell us what we're missing because, we're not the end all be all. We have our takes and our subjective reactions, but there may be things that you guys bring to the table. I know that's why I talk with Eric and the other guys about this because they point out things. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I didn't even catch that. So this is one of my joys about comics, not just reading by yourself, but sharing the hobby enthusiasm with others. We're going to head off now into the sunset. Until next time, maybe in a couple weeks. And Eric, say goodnight, kids.